In case you missed it, the U.S. government has been using a secret police force to round up people they suspect of being undocumented immigrants and disappearing them off of the streets, out of schools, and even away from their scheduled immigration hearings without bothering to show their own faces or identifying themselves in any way. What could possibly go wrong? A lot, obviously, but today I'll be talking about how this new dystopia doesn't just hurt the people who are being detained, deported, and separated from their families. Today I want to focus on how the Trump administration's treatment of immigrants has enabled and encouraged a new field of con artists. Well, not an entirely new field. Con artists have been carving out niches to target different vulnerable people for centuries, millennia even. And the targeting of immigrants isn't completely new. They have continued to be marginalized here in the U.S. throughout even Democratic majority administrations, because ever since 9/11, Dems have adopted Republican talking points on dangerous immigrants coming to steal our jobs and rape our women. But these new efforts by the Trump administration have made it trivially easy for con artists to find, target, and extract money and other resources from immigrants. In fact, in this case, the victims are seeking out and hiring the con artists. First, let me lay out the major points that led to this for those who don't know, and also to offer some personal experience of mine. Upon taking office, Donald Trump's administration ordered Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE officers, to capture and deport more immigrants than is even possible due to, us being previously a first world nation with due process, which is the phrase that we use to refer to the idea that we should make sure a person is who we think they are and have done the things we think they've done before figuring out the appropriate action to take. Without due process, even U.S. citizens who have never broken a law can be imprisoned and sent to concentration camps because without due process, how do we know they're U.S. citizens who have never broken a law? And so ICE was challenged to gather up as many immigrants as possible who have committed any kind of trouble or who might have caused some type of trouble. They could do that by investigating crimes, but that's hard. So they did the easier thing by simply going to the places with the highest concentration of immigrants, where odds are that some of those immigrants may have some outstanding issue with their paperwork. That place is immigration court, where immigrants trying to follow the law and secure their right to remain in the U.S. legally go to meet with judges and submit their documentation. In order to catch as many people as possible, the ICE officers wear plain clothes and don't identify themselves. Which, by the way, brings me to the first way that predators are exploiting this situation. This week in Philadelphia, a man pretending to be an ICE agent robbed a car repair garage because no one really knows who is or is not ICE, and robbing a place is actually pretty low down on the list of shitty things ICE agents do, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. Anyway, the real ICE agents wait for immigrants to show up to immigration court, and they grab them and throw them in a van, sometimes with the rest of their family, sometimes not, sometimes with their children, sometimes the children are just left alone to figure things out for themselves. Likely hundreds of people have been black-bagged in this manner, though could be thousands. We don't know exactly how many because this neo-Gestapo operates with little to no oversight or accountability. And to be clear, while this is all the worst for Black and brown immigrants and low-income immigrants and immigrants who do not speak English very well, it's also happening to middle-class white Trump-supporting immigrants from Europe, like this stupid asshole who was grabbed by ICE at a citizenship hearing, probably because he forgot to file one form during a time when his wife was suffering a miscarriage. None of this is shocking if you've been paying attention, so my friends and family and I weren't surprised, except for a bit of disbelief over how quickly it was happening. But several people close to me are pursuing citizenship now as a small but very real and important way to protect themselves, because even without due process, the chances of an actual U.S. citizen clawing their way back to the U.S. from a Salvadoran concentration camp are better than those for a permanent resident with no criminal history. Seeing even white Trumpy dipshits get snatched out of immigration hearings led everyone I know to immediately hire an immigration lawyer who would be able to watch over the process, make sure that every I is dotted, every T is crossed, attend all in-person meetings with them, and also be on speed dial in case of kidnapping. And we all have the privilege of having the time, the money, the internet access, and the language skills to be able to research these lawyers, check their credentials, and afford their fees. Many immigrants across the country, unfortunately, do not have that privilege, and that's where the con artists step in. In a recent piece for Documented New York, journalist Rommel H. Ojeda profiles some of the victims in a growing trend in which con artists pose as immigration lawyers on social media and wait for their victims to contact them. One immigrant from Honduras, who just went by the initial N, reported that he had previously attended virtual court appointments when he first arrived in the U.S. seeking asylum. When he realized that Trump had a good chance of getting a second term, he got worried and decided that he needed a lawyer. On Facebook, he found a group of supposed legal experts who told him to switch over to talking on WhatsApp, at which point they charged him $5,000 and said you could pay in installments. They then took him through a series of virtual hearings that featured his lawyer, an immigration officer, and finally a judge wearing robes who informed him that he had been fully pardoned and he just needed to pay a few more thousands of dollars in fees and then he was home free. Crucially, throughout these virtual hearings, N's lawyer advised him to avoid going to any in-person meetings he might be scheduled for, assuring him that the lawyer would handle it all. So not only did N eventually realize that he had not been pardoned, not only did he realize he had wasted thousands of dollars that he couldn't afford to lose, but also he learned that those in-person meetings he had skipped resulted in a very real judge ordering him to actually be deported. I cover scams for a living, and even I am just sitting here in awe at the utter sociopathy required to completely and utterly destroy a person like this. His money, his hopes and dreams, and even his actual home could just be gone. He's since found a real lawyer through Envision Freedom Fund, and they are attempting to overturn the deportation ruling. It's worth highlighting that N said he hooked up with these scammers because of the mere possibility that Trump would be elected in November and would institute the policies he was bragging about on the campaign trail. So these scammers were already up and running during the Biden administration when they were being tough on immigration. Like, they saw where this was headed. Trump really is now doing these things. So now immigrants know they will not be safe even going to an immigration court to continue the legal process of becoming a permanent resident or citizen. These scam artists are going to be making bank now. And much like we have little information on what ICE is doing, how many people they're disappearing or deporting, we have even less information about the immigrants who are getting scammed in this way. The few people interviewed for Documented were those who had testified at a hearing about this fraud, but how many more people are out there who'll never step forward? It's always difficult to get people who have been conned to speak out about their experience. Sometimes because they refuse to accept that they've been conned at all, but often because they're embarrassed. In the case of undocumented immigrants who sought out the con artists specifically because they cannot trust American law enforcement officers to abide by the law and protect their rights, how can we expect them to go to the police or the FBI or even their local city council meetings? We as a society have abandoned them, and an abandoned person is just fresh meat for the next predator who comes along. If you want to help, there are many organizations trying to protect our immigrant neighbors. They're often very localized, so I suggest searching for one in your community. That said, I did ask my Blue Sky followers for their favorite orgs so I could give them a signal boost, particularly if they're nationwide. Eric Azevedo recommended Respond Crisis Translation, where you can help vulnerable people overcome language barriers, either using your own translation skills or your donations. Slideron recommends Immigration Law and Justice Network, which provides legal services for immigrants throughout the U.S. Kalia recommended the Colorado Rapid Response Team, which gives me a good reason to mention that there are rapid response teams across the U.S. that you can join, and they will usually train you on what they need from you. Here's a list of networks in California, thanks to the California Collaborative for Immigrant Justice, but please search for a rapid response team near you. So, who did I miss? Are there other good groups that I didn't mention? Please drop them in the comments below. Help us keep our immigrant friends, family, and neighbors safe. Okay, so the world is pretty stressful right now. If you need a little break, check out my second channel, Rebecca vs. Life, where I do live streams, book reviews, life updates, and even moments of zen, like Indy riding in a sidecar around the California coast. Link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching and liking and subscribing and commenting over here on the main channel as well. And a big shout out to everybody supporting me on Patreon, including this month's producers: Adam Grant, Al Swiger, Alex Forkosh, Carrie and Calvin Black, Cordwainer Jones, Eric Brodeur, Eric Sawinda, Goldie, Johnny Wallflower, Kai Matthews, Keith Bostick, Christina Foss, Luke Swanson, Michael Belleroux, Michael Cassidy, Michael Sadell, Mike Quinton, River Champimont, Rick Klein, and Vizzini. If you want your name added to the list, check out patreon.com/Rebecca.